Hi, I'm Rusty Shackelford with Rusty Shackelford's Grizzly Reviews, and I just saw Pan.
Welcome to Neverland!
Pan is the most recent attempt by Warner Brothers to revive a classic series by giving it varying levels of twists. It follows a young orphan named Peter as he and his fellow orphans are sold into slavery to Blackbeard the pirate. After it is discovered that Peter can fly, Blackbeard begins to fear a fairy prophecy that a young flying boy will be his downfall. Peter escapes with the help of James Hook, and they join the natives in their fight to bring down Blackbeard. So a lot of studios have tried sort of these drastic reimaginings of classic series in the past few years in a way to give new life into old series without just doing a direct rehashing. And unfortunately, most of them haven't worked to any great fanfare, and Pan kind of falls into a lot of that trap. There's a lot of good things that Pan has going for it, but unfortunately they don't capitalize on those and they don't continue them throughout the movie. I walked in kind of with low expectations, and the saddest part about the film for me is actually that the first half hour is really good. I was actually really enthralled and enjoying things. Shortly after the beginning of the movie, Peter and all of his fellow orphans are actually sold into slavery, and they're taken by pirates onto a floating pirate ship, and they're flown to Never Neverland. And one of the coolest things the movie does is actually this arrival scene as they reach Blackbeard's mines, where he's making all the orphans dig for fairy dust. And as they arrive, everyone in the mine is singing Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Now, there's definitely a cynic in me that did not want to like this scene, but it works. It was really original. It felt fresh. The only reason it's the song is if you're familiar with the lyrics. There weren't any big instrumental parts or anything like that. It was just pure crowd a cappella singing "Smells Like Teen Spirit." And then a few minutes later, in a different scene, they are singing the Ramones' "Hey Ho, Let's Go," And I thought, wow, this is a really kind of fun thing. It's just probably a great thing for the parents. The kids probably don't know what's going on at all. But then, unfortunately, that's the last that you see of it. And I feel like all of the originality, all the things like that, are in the very beginning of the movie. And then it just goes to generic, well-produced and well-styled, but generic and uninspired feeling fantasy, where there's just not this fresh taste that we see in the beginning of the movie. And that's just really unfortunate, because you see the potential, you see the capabilities of doing something great, and it just kind of lets it go to the wayside. The biggest missed opportunity of the film is its chance to retell or tell a different side of a familiar tale. We see James Hook, Peter Pan's friend, as it starts out. And so the whole movie, I was really expecting for there to be a moment when James Hook and Peter drift apart. And I thought that would come towards the end of the movie, where, say, they're kind of buddy-buddy this whole way along, and then something happened where Hook feels betrayed, or he feels cast aside, or the conclusion happens and everybody just forgets about Hook, and he takes that very personally. We're just never given a real reason for why Hook would become the villain later on. Quite frankly, I don't see why they didn't just make Blackbeard Hook, because Blackbeard is Hook for all intents and purposes. If you've seen the movie Hook with Robin Williams and you've seen the classic animated movie, Blackbeard is Hook. There's really not a lot of difference other than he has two hands. It seems like Warner Brothers went through a lot of effort to make changes, but that they just didn't really think about why they made those changes and why those changes were important. Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Blackbeard is actually really fun, and the problem isn't him or the way that the character is designed. It's ultimately the story that just doesn't leave Blackbeard feeling like an original or standout character. Sadly, the film's leading woman, Rooney Mara, who plays Tiger Lily, a native, also feels kind of a lot in this role, where she feels like more of a plot device used to give Hook motivation to stick around and to give a love interest, rather than a compelling character on her own. She could have been something potential, and there was a lot of good groundwork, but it just never seems to come to fruition. Visually, the film is very well done. If you like big in-your-face 3D effects, then you'll enjoy a lot of the stuff they have going on here. It is a lot of pop out in the screen. Personally, that's not my flavor. I prefer depth over things coming towards you. Comparatively, I watched The Martian a week ago, and that was more about making a richer scene by, extending the depth of the field, while this is, a lot of in-your-face, things popping out, dart towards you or whatever. And that's probably, obviously the focus of this movie is to families and to children, and they'll probably appreciate that a lot more than I will. In the end, if this is a family outing for you and your kids really want to see the movie, then I'd say go ahead. This movie just won't be something that people remember and quote decades later like Hook. Some nice ideas and well-intentions just don't polish a generic and uninspired story. In the end, I'm going to have to give Pan a 6 out of 10. I'm Rusty Shackelford with Rusty Shackelford's Grizzly Reviews. Make sure to like and subscribe, and keep looking out for new videos in the near future.
All the monsters I've ever created are locked inside these books. But when they open...